Do I need a living trust? This is a question that seems to come up a lot. And first, let's define what we mean by living trust here. It's an entity created to hold and manage a person's assets during their lifetime, and it outlines the management or distribution of those assets after death. Now, to further clarify what this video is about, we're talking about revocable living trusts. And revocable means that the person who created the trust can change it or revoke it entirely whenever they want. So what are the benefits of this type of trust? And I see two big ones: probate avoidance and privacy. Assets in a living trust don't get bogged down in the probate process when the grantor passes away. So the beneficiaries typically have access to those assets right away. And unlike wills, which become public record, the terms of a living trust and the assets held by that trust remain private. If you have extra time and an odd kind of curiosity, you can dig through county files and see how much a deceased person had in probate assets and exactly to whom those assets went. Some counties even have these records posted online for all to see with a few clicks of the mouse. So then what are some of the disadvantages of revocable living trusts? For one, it'll likely cost more to establish and maintain a living trust than it is to simply have a will drafted. And then there's also the added complexity or hassle of ensuring that all your major assets, including the ones you acquire later, are retitled in the name of that living trust. So there you have two advantages and two disadvantages of living trusts. There are also other factors that I could probably call disadvantages, but I look at them more as misunderstandings of what living trusts really are. First, a revocable living trust does not reduce taxes. There is no tax shield here. All assets held in a trust are considered to be yours while you're living and at death. So there's no estate tax avoidance either by simply holding assets in a living trust. Another misunderstanding is that these trusts somehow protect your assets. It doesn't. There is no protection or shelter against creditors or lawsuits. The wealth or assets contained in a trust considered to be yours, and it is there for the taking. It's usually after sharing these two misunderstood characteristics that whoever is asking me if they need a living trust will simply say, never mind, and we'll move on. There are, of course, different types of trusts that can shelter assets, reduce your tax bill, and protect your children against blowing their inheritance all at once. But again, for this video, we're focused on revocable living trusts. Now, getting back to that question that kicked off this video, do you need a living trust? The answer is not always black and white, and I will say that my tendency is to not recommend living trusts for Washington State clients, unless it's abundantly clear that a living trust is far and away the best option for that client's situation. Now, if you live in California, then sure, a living trust generally makes sense because California's probate process is much more costly than it is here in Washington State. The way I see it is that there's a continuum from don't need a trust to need a trust. And there are various factors that move you toward one end of this continuum. If all your wealth is tied up in IRAs and your house and you have one child, you most likely don't need a living trust because IRAs pass outside of probate anyway, and you could add a transfer on death deed to your house to avoid probate there. It's a piece of cake. As wealth and complexity grow, then you start inching across this continuum. Let's say you own real estate in multiple states. Well, a living trust can make sense to avoid going through probate in each state where you hold property. And as wealth grows, there might be an inclination to value privacy a bit more. And you may not want the world to know what your assets are and who's getting what when you pass away. A living trust can make good sense here too. Let me wrap up by repeating that it's not always crystal clear if a living trust is your best option. If you'd like to discuss your own personal situation, give me a call. Otherwise, that's it for now. I'll see you in a month.